Marc Sabatella here from the Mastering MuseScore School. And I will remember to turn the volume down and then turn it back up. Hi, everyone. So, this is the MuseScore Cafe, where I spend some time talking to you about a different aspect of using MuseScore and take your questions, and we just have a nice chat. So the topic that I've picked for today is the Google Summer of Code, and just kind of every year I've been doing this, kind of feature some of the students who have been selected for the program. So I'll tell you a little bit about the program and then a little bit about their. Okay, so as always, it's so wonderful to see people checking in here and just see where everyone's from. This is great. So let me tell you a little bit, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Google Summer of Code, I want to tell you about that. I also want to get my chat up on my phone so I can be looking at it while I'm looking at other things. That's how I always forget to do that first. Okay, so oh, you're gonna have a rehearsal, Nick. That's great that you're having rehearsals. Yeah, I think while the music plays, and I try to talk, sometimes it's not ideal. This has been pointed out, and I'll have to, perhaps reconsider how I do that introduction. Um, but yeah, it's the software I'm using to do the broadcast. Maybe can't handle multiple input sources at the same time as well as I would like. Anyhow, so MuseScore is, of course, open source software, which means that anyone who wants to can get involved in programming it. And that's how I became involved. I just decided there were certain features that didn't quite work the way I wanted. And I had a programming background, so I got involved. And actually, the first feature that I got involved in programming had to do with chord symbols. And I have now implemented a lot of features involving chord symbols, and one of the projects I'm going to be telling you about today also involves chord symbols. So uh, anyone can get involved, but Google does this thing every year where they sponsor students, like college students. The program, the way the program works is you have to be a university student at an accredited university. All these rules that you have to, you know, qualify for, but you then apply to the program and you apply to specific organizations, and usually there's a couple hundred different organizations that can sponsor, that you can work for, and MuseScore has been one of those organizations, like something like 10 out of the last 12 years, and we will take on some students to work on MuseScore, and Google will pay the students to do that. It's like a internship kind of a thing, if you want to look at it that way. And we've gotten a lot of really great features that have come from students in the Google Summer of Code program over the years. And I'll be kind of mentioning some of those as we go along, because some of them relate to things that are happening this time. So what we up with there's this whole process of you apply, and you apply to work on a specific project, and you have to propose what your project is going to be. You can use one of the ideas that we actually kind of put out there and say, hey, you can here's something that we think would make a good project. We always encourage people to come up with their own projects as well, and a couple of the projects have come about that way, from people who just said, you know what, I have my own idea of something that I think would be worth doing. But probably, yeah, definitely much more often, the project that's selected is one that we've kind of put out there. So I don't know if our students are here. I definitely invited them, and so you remember that those of you who are in the community, which I think most of you are in the Mastering MuseScore community, I pinned the link to the top. You saw me asking about the spelling of cafe, and I mentioned that because my name is so commonly misspelt that I'm really self-conscious about the spelling of cafe. And by the way, I figured out how to do it. Check this out. I spell CAF, and then I switch to the international keyboard with Control Space, and now I can type tick E. and get a cafe, and then switch back with control space again. So there's my cafe. And I realize I don't have my keyboard log thing on. So let me get that happening. All right, there we go. So I'm also self-conscious about pronunciation of names for maybe some of the same reasons. So the three students that have been selected here, their names as my best pronunciation will be Ashwat, Siddharth, and Arjun. And they all go by, as is often the case in this sort of world where people have handles like Mr. Firefox 411 or whatever that I see here, right? A lot of so the handles here are Mystic Slice, Surajala, and Siddharth is just Siddharth. So Mystic Slice is Arjun's here. Excellent. Thank you for being here, and feel free to give me pointers on pronunciation. So I'm going to go through just my own interpretation of what I think the projects are about. And hopefully, as we get closer to the end of the summer, I will be able to actually show the code, and we'll get to interview people and have the students actually come on live and do the demonstrations themselves. I we did that last year, and I thought that was very successful. So the three projects here, Arjun, his project is, oh, now I've actually forgotten which one is which. Yours is the Tempo project. Yes? No? No. Yes. Um, so so one of the projects is about tempo, one of them is about accessibility, and one of them is about chord symbols. And so I'm currently forgetting which is which because I'm scattered. I'm scattered. Y'all know that, right? Um, so if I flip over to where I actually have, I'm still trying to find the right window. Um, this is where I have the projects. And this information, the actual proposals, I'm not sure are meant to be public, so I'm not going to like try to show the actual thing. So there's Arjun's, the accessibility one. There we go. So I'm going to run through these things. I'm going to do Arjun's first because since he's here right now, and who knows if other people will be checking in as we go. So accessibility is something that MuseScore has taken seriously for a long time, and by accessibility specifically, we normally mean uh, accessibility having to do with support for visually impaired users. And some of the first work that we did for that was supporting people who have some vision but not great vision. And we wanted to be able to create large print scores, but not just any old large print scores, because it's very easy to just make the print large. What's harder is to uh, make all the ratios look right. In other words, if I take a score like my cafe here and say we're reading the trumpet part, and I do nothing but let's make this a little smaller so it fits on the screen. If I do nothing but go to um, format, page settings, and crank up the staff size to make it larger, it is now larger, but perhaps this isn't really how we want it to look in terms of the spacing between the notes. It's basically scaled things very literally. And sometimes that's not what you want. Sometimes you want certain things like the thickness of the staff lines. Depending on the particulars of your visual acuity, there's different customizations. So we implemented a lot of customizations for that. Then, a bit later, as part of a Google Summer of the Code project, we actually implemented screen reader support. And some of you have seen that, but I want to do a quick little demo of that since I said I wanted to talk about what's already possible. Then we'll talk about what the new project is going to be about. So if I run Orca, which is the screen reader that I can run on Linux here,
screen reader on.
It reads out loud, and I can now use the keyboard to navigate through the score and
Orca for MuseScore.
Okay, here we go. And of course, it has demoitis and doesn't seem to want to be reading at the moment. Um, Not sure why. Not going to worry about it. I'm just going to kill Orca because Orca is misbehaving. Uh, mm, there we go. All right. So anyhow, Orca will read things out loud, or on Windows, there's different screen readers. On macOS, different ones. So we've implemented this screen reader support and a lot of keyboard navigation. Now, this Arjun's project is returning to the subject of low vision users who this thing that we did here to allow these customizations for how large print scores might be printed, that's really about how it prints mostly. But there is the question of what it looks like on screen. And for some people with low vision, reading black on white is not easy. So different people have different visual impairments. And so the specific one here is uh, is having to do with inverting the colors, but also customizing the colors. I think that's maybe the best way I can explain what you're trying to do. And yeah, it's expected that we're in these early stages, that there's not necessarily a clear idea here. And it's it's possible that some discussion might come out of today's presentation where people actually, you might get some feedback that turned out to be useful for you. I can show you what MuseScore can do already. uh, it has a dark theme, right? Some of you may already know about the dark theme. If I go to edit, preferences, and then change from the light theme to the dark theme, and then hit OK, I get the interface is now, light on dark, but the score itself is not, right? The score itself is still black on white. And this can be customized with some effort, definitely with some effort. If you go to edit, preferences, and then canvas, you can make the paper color black. I'm just going to make it a dark purple so that I can still see the print of. I can still see the black letters against it. So, hello, I clicked you, Mr. OK button. Oh, I have to click this OK button first. Sorry. So I can make the paper be dark, and then I can also make uh, notes and other things light colored uh, by a sort of a convoluted process. If I go to Edit, Preferences, Advanced, I can select the colors for a number of different things here. What the default score color is. One of these things is the default score color. And so there's a whole series of controls that I can do. uh, UI, it's in here somewhere. UI score default color, and I can change that to white. And actually, I'm not going to change it to white because I want to be able to see it even later if I change my colors again. So I have that color selected, and now I have my notes. Whoops, I guess I didn't get it right. So in any case, it is possible, but it's convoluted, and it wouldn't get the staves. The staves wouldn't show up. So obviously I did something wrong there. But you can see this is not, yeah, I said the UI score default color. I would have thought that actually did it, but apparently I am mistaken, that is not how you do it. Maybe I have to create a new score for it to show up. Let's try it, because sometimes that's the case also. Aha, here we go. So, new score. There we go. Now, the staff lines, though, are not that color. So for that, I have to go to staff properties and actually change the staff line color also. By the way, I'm about to regret having done this because I know this messes up my palettes, and so I'm going to have to recreate some stuff. Um, But in any case, with some effort, I was able to do all of that and finally get something resembling light on dark. But it's still it's convoluted to do that, and the actual degree of customization is not great. So, in a nutshell, Arjun's project is simplifying this and making this much more directly supported. So what I'm going to do now is, now that I've showed you how to do this, I'm actually going to go and undo all of those changes because there's at least some chance. So what color did I want? I wanted black as my default color. And then the canvas, I want the paper to be white. All right, and again, I'll have to create a new score before it actually shows up that way. I'm going to actually also leave the dark mode here because I want to show you something else that you might find useful. If I go back to general and then turn this back to light mode, I now have MuseScore back the way I'm used to things looking. On most operating systems, and by most I mean Windows has this facility, pretty sure Mac OS has this facility, Chrome, which is what I'm using, has this facility, and then Linux, which is really what I'm using when I say I'm using Chrome. Linux has different variants, and most of the Linux variants would have something like what I'm about to show you. So this little red cursor here, this thing that I turn on for these demonstrations is part of the accessibility settings. Well, there are other accessibility settings, and one of them is high contrast mode. When I turn on high contrast mode, boom, really quickly, we just got everything that I just did, right? Everything that I had to work so hard for to change the theme of the application, as well as the paper color, as well as the text color, it all sort of worked. That's great, but it actually only sort of works. I mean, it works pretty well, but the problem is, like some colors, like this orange that we're seeing right now, that's because it's blue, right? Normally, when you select things, they're blue. Well, blue inverted becomes orange. The inverted colors aren't necessarily ideal, but it's a whole lot better than nothing. So some operating systems do have that facility built in. So there's a lot of customization that's there already, but the whole idea of this project is to bring another level of that to make MuseScore that much more directly usable by low vision users who find light on dark easier to read and producing basically providing more control for that. So, is there anything else? I'm like trying to monitor the chat here and see, Arjun, if you have any other um, comments that you would want to make about this, or questions that you might want to put. Like I saw Michael, Fretless Spaceman. I know that you're uh, someone who might possibly have some use for some of this. I don't know if your particular situation involves, like, oh, you actually would enjoy reading light on dark, or if that's not something that actually helps, because everyone's vision is different. But I know that you have mentioned some sort of vision issues. I'm going to put back, where did I go? I'm going to go back to my regular mode here. And I'm also going to just, yeah, I'm going to be fine just leaving MuseScore up. I'm just going to leave it up here. So, anyhow, that's what this project is going to be about. It's going to be about adding more of those sorts of customizations over the presentation of the score. So, I'm going to kind of move on, and if there's other questions that come up, other comments that come up, hopefully you all can be engaging in the chat about that, or come back to the community afterwards and continue the discussion there. Meanwhile, I'm going to move on and talk about the project that I'm actually mentoring. So the Google Summer of Code project program has students who are sponsored by Google, and they also kind of sponsor people who are within the project, like me, to act as mentors. And so I've mentored like the screen reader project and some of the keyboard navigation project and chord symbol playback. The fact that chord symbols now play back, right? If I come over to the piano part here and you click on that B flat 7, you hear B flat 7, right? You hear E flat 7. That was implemented by Google Summer of Code student Peter a couple years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. I want to say, um, and so that's one of the things that was done as part of Google Summer of Code. Well, one of the things that so we the student that I'm going to be mentoring this year, his name is Ashwat, I think is my best call at that. Mystic Slice being his handle, and I don't know if you're here, but I always don't know. Like Mystic Slice, there's a movie that I didn't see, but I'm aware of called Mystic Pizza, and so I always think of that when I see the handle Mystic Slice, and I have no idea if it's a reference to that movie or not. But anyhow, the idea with this project is going to be about providing customizations for the appearance of chord symbols. So we provide a lot of customization already. So I'm going to go back to just a plain ordinary score here, and I'm going to enter a chord symbol here. C minor 7, flat 13, say. That's a chord symbol. Well, that's how it looks by default. So we have a number of customizations. Certainly you can change the font, right? You can change the font from the default Edwin to whatever. Here's Deja Vu, Serif, all the different, whatever fonts you have on your system can be, there's Arial, etc. So all of these. So, there was a question about Note Performer. We can't say. We don't know. It's something we would all like to see happen, but there's a lot of things that would have to fall into place for it to happen. So Note Performer is definitely something we would love to see happen someday. It seems like there's maybe a chance that it would happen for MuseScore 4 when it first releases. Frankly, it's probably more likely it would happen later. What we will say is there's probably going to be something that's similarly good that happens for MuseScore 4, whether it's actual Note Performer or something else. But MuseScore 4 is still a long ways off, so it's still way too early to say for sure what's in and what's out. Okay, so we can change fonts using the inspector. You can certainly change size using the inspector. But what you can also do is I'm going to switch to the Muse Jazz font, which then has this sort of handwritten look. We can also do something else. Like this M is actually going to make it be MI because that's sort of the official what jazz publishers use these days. Hal Leonard, Warner Brothers, Advanced Music, all the major jazz publishers these days are using MI for minor and MA for major. So this is fine. It looks okay, but the jazz font makes it look that way. But if I actually go to Format, Style, and then Chord Symbols, you'll see there's a jazz style here. And look what happens to that chord symbol when I change to the jazz style. So what it did is it automatically converted the MI to this special symbol here, which is actually kind of a, small caps MI instead of lowercase letters. And it superscripted the 7, and it also superscripted the flat 13, but it superscripted it smaller, right? It's smaller and higher than the 7. So the jazz style does all that stuff automatically. So that's great. But if you're not using the jazz style, you might wonder, well, can I have some of that same stuff happen? Well, you kind of can. So if I come over here, if I go back to Edwin as the default font, and then I go back to Format, Style, Chord Symbols, instead of switching to the jazz style, I'm going to play with these extension, scaling, and offset. Extension is this number here, the 7. So I can scale it to be smaller, right? I can make it be just 80% size. And then I can make the offset be negative, which raises it higher. And then I can tell so this flat 13 is what we call a modifier. I can also make the modifier smaller, and I can make it smaller still than the extension was, and then also raise it up. So I can get a lot of that same look just using the controls that we already provide. But I couldn't change that MI. We don't have a facility to say, you know what, I want that MI to be smaller. You could have a font in which your lowercase letters are smaller than your capital letter if you have a font that does that, or maybe a font that uses small caps for the lowercase. If you've got a font that supports that, you can do it. But we don't provide direct control for that sort of thing. That's the sort of thing. And then this whole process of using this dialogue and fiddling with these buttons, that's not necessarily the most convenient way to do things. Furthermore, you might decide that, the 7 you want superscripted this much, but if it was C minor 9, you want it superscripted differently. Or here's an annoying one. Maybe you want the MI to not be superscripted, but the MA, if you're using a major symbol, to be superscripted. Why would you want that? I don't know, because Sibelius apparently does that by default, and apparently some published fake book in the world does it that way. So there's additional customizations over this whole thing that go above and beyond what we currently allow. That is what Mystic Slice's project is going to be about. So it's going to be about customizing the appearance of your chord symbols, giving you basically an editor of some kind that will allow you perhaps to just drag these symbols around, or let you select them and have controls for it. The exact details of what the interface is going to look like, that is not decided yet. But it's that sort of thing. The ability to sort of customize your defaults, like how much you want superscript, you want these extension to be superscripted, how much you want these modifiers to be superscripted. But then also, I said maybe you want some extensions to be superscripted differently than others. That's not really likely, but here's one that is. Alt. If I type C minor 7 Alt, the way I had that set up, the flat 13 does get superscripted, but Alt doesn't. Why? Because we treat them differently, and the way the rules work, we thought that people didn't want the alt superscripted by default, and we don't have control over that. There is this whole facility where you can design a custom XML file. If you're really into getting into the weeds a little bit, you can go. Let me reset all these things here because they're going to mess me up. But if I go to the custom setting here for style, and then say I want to open a file, and I pick this one here that says chords stacked. This style will allow me, I think I actually have to let me do that with a new score, because now this score is a little bit polluted by the fact that I've already done some customization. So I'm going to come here and type C7 flat 5, or flat 9 flat 5. And then I'm going to go back to Format, Style, Custom, and reload that one that says chord stack. Now this is not one that is supplied with MuseScore, but it is one that I created and posted to the forums a year or so ago. So the chords stacked, it doesn't look stacked right now, right? But I think the idea of the chords stacked is I put it in square brackets. Aha, there it is. By putting the extensions there in square brackets, that causes them to become stacked when using that XML file. So that's but if I'll show you what that file looks like. It's not pretty. But it is possible to define these things yourself if you know what you're doing. And, I kind of know what I'm doing because I actually implemented most of this stuff that I'm showing you here. All the stuff about how the superscripting works and all these things are things that I've implemented over the years. What am I looking for? Oh, yeah, not under scores, but under styles. So if you're really, really wanting to play with this sort of stuff, I'm looking for chords stacked. This file here is the file that defines how all this works. And most of this is actually just copied from the jazz style that we provide already. But what I added was something, right here. Here are these lines here where it talks about what to do with the brackets there. I'm not sure if that slash is actually part of it or not. I think it might not be. I don't remember, to be honest. But basically, these lines here are what added the special facility for that stacking to work. There's a little more to it than that, but most of this is all just copied directly from the jazz style we provided. Then I also put in ones here so that if you type certain combinations, I can handle it a little more gracefully. So for instance, if you notice these parentheses, they're not really sized right or anything. They're not, it doesn't really look great. If I then actually type parentheses, C7, I can type anything I want in the brackets. I can type 9 and say flat 2, which is not a thing, right? Oh, it doesn't stack those because flat 2 is so not a thing. But if I put 9 and flat 9, nope, it doesn't do that either. All right, then I'm wrong. But I should be able to put pretty much anything within reason in here and it would stack, but it clearly doesn't, and so I'm clearly a liar. But let me let me try to show you what I really wanted to do, which is this. It doesn't really look any different, does it? So what do I know? I did this a year ago. I don't remember. In any case, it is possible if you know your way around how this stuff works, and it's, there's a little bit of documentation on it. Mostly it's about deciphering what's happening and sort of reading the code here and figuring it all out. So, and yes, no minor alt is not a thing. I'm just, just basically showing some stuff. So, how would you know that minor is extension and 13 is a modifier? Yeah, no, the book even predates. The book is only from MuseScore 2. My online course talks about it. Online course definitely talks about it. So, the MuseScore Mastering MuseScore Complete Online course definitely talks about that. The extension is, I mean, these terms are in fairly standard use, but not necessarily. The extension is the first number. Everything else of that is a modifier or an I'd call it an alteration, but they're not always actually alterations, right? Because it could be something like, add 2 or no 5 or, things like that. Alt. That's not uh, actually it's not actually an alteration. Well, alt, I guess, is an alteration. But so it's something that modifies the basic thing. But the fact that the first number is called the extension on the chord, that's something that I think most theory texts would call it that. They probably wouldn't devote a lot of ink to it, but they would call it that. But definitely in the online course under the chord symbol customization, I'm pretty sure I show that. Okay, so let's see. Figured bass is absolutely possible. Figured bass, Control G, and now I can type, 6, 4, etc., and whatever else you might want. There's all these special symbols. What is it? 6 and then a no, 5 and then a slash. You can tell I don't do figured bass very much, but it definitely, is it 7 with a slash? Something you can put a slash on and it knows to draw the slash. There it is. Yeah, it draws the slash through the number. So yeah, the figured bass facility knows how to do this stuff, and it works very much like the chord symbols in that once you've entered one of these symbols, you hit spacebar and it moves on to the next beat or measure, etc. There's all these different things that it knows how to do. So yeah, just go to the online handbook and look up figured bass. It'll happily explain everything there is to know about figured bass. Oh, there's figured bass facility. There's also Roman numeral analysis facility, and for that, it's view. No, it's not view. Of course, it's add text Roman numeral analysis. I've defined my own shortcut for it in Edit Preferences Shortcuts, so because I use this a lot. But now I can type, flat 6 7, or 4 3, or whatever I want, and it will format everything kind of appropriately. So there's figured bass built in, there's Roman numerals analysis built in, and there's chord symbol built in. There's also Nashville numbering built in. If I go to add text Nashville number, I can type in 1, and I can type in 1 dash for minor, and all the different things. Yeah, I don't know enough about Nashville numbering. I know, Michael, you do. You use that some, or your own modified version. But yeah, so it can handle sixth chords by superscripting them, and then 5-3, no, 5-7. You put the scale degree in the bass. There we go, scale degree in the bass. So the 5 chord with scale degree 7 in the bass. So Nashville numbering also. So anyhow, the chord symbol customization facility is going to be something that gives you just that much more control. You would be able to create things like these stacks and whatever else without having to dive so deep into the weeds of things. I mean, it'll still, you have to deal with this facility, but it'll be designed to be something an average user would actually want to use. So that is that facility there. And again, if there's more questions or comments about it, um, so yeah, the quality of the chord is another term there, and that's the major or minor part, the major, minor, diminished, and augmented, the quality of the chord. And then the seventh can be considered part of the quality. Like minor seventh is a different quality than major seventh, but the number specifically might be called the extension, because we might say minor ninth, but it has a quality of being a minor seventh chord, but extended with a ninth. That's where the term extension comes from. Anyhow, so yeah, chord symbols, there's not a lot of consistency to things, which is why we need to provide so much customization, because everyone has their own way of doing it. Every single published fake book has their own set of rules for how they like to do it. Every professional arranger, well, most professional arrangers these days, if you're really professional, then you work with a publisher, and the publisher tells you this is how your chord symbols will look, because that is our look as a publishing house. But they're mostly all using this system that's designed by two guys named Brandt and Romer. Okay, so chord symbols customization. That is the project that I'm actually mentoring. The last project is going to be about tempo, and I'll show you that in a second. But I see another question here about adding parentheses on the chords. You just type them, right? So I type those parentheses. Let me go back to just a normal score that I haven't. Well, let me just create a new score that I haven't customized at all. So here's a nice new score. If I want C7 and I want to put my flat 9 in parentheses because I like flat 9s in parentheses, just type them. And there they are, parenthesized. And if you do go to Format, Style, and then you say you want your modifiers scaled smaller and offset, then it includes the parentheses as part of that scaling. So yeah, just type parentheses. You want parentheses, just type them. Everything in the chord symbol is designed to be what you see is what you get. That is actually the first thing that I implemented. When I said my initial entry into the world of MuseScore programming was working on the chord symbol, it was working on the parser so that you could type pretty much anything you wanted, because before that we had a predefined list of like 200 chord symbols, and you had to type exactly one of those 200, and if it didn't expect parentheses, it would reject it. It just said, nope, that's not one of those official 200 chords, so you can't type it, and it wouldn't recognize it. So I was like, no, you should be able to type parentheses if you want. You should be able to type flat 9 flat 5 or flat 9 flat 5, because either order could be okay. So, all right. So I mentioned that the last project is about tempo, and I don't know, Siddharth, if you're here and if I'm at all saying your name reasonably, but the project has to do with tempo markings. And again, the project details themselves are still. Well, they're not like meant to be like publicly available or anything. I can show you the summary here. Um, the summary is about improving uh, how tempo marks, and it says improving the engraving support, meaning what they look like, so that you can type complex tempo markings, including things that like combine metronome markings and words, and also metric modulations, changes from quarter note to half note, and also or quarter note to dotted quarter, and also, as it says, adding relative tempo changes. So you can say, I want this tempo to be 90% of what it was before. Now, this also leads you to think, oh, well, we also want to be able to do something like a retardando, which isn't just 90% of what I had before, but gradually reducing. And that's kind of the stretch goal for the project, to make as it says, if enough times available, to add things like retardando, so that you can uh, have the tempo gradually change over the course of the piece. So, so here's some notes. If I just enter a tempo marking here at the beginning, and I'm using Shift or Alt Shift T is the shortcut. Could you see that? No, you couldn't, right? Why not? Did I not start off my demo thing? I think I must have killed the demo when I started Orca. All right, there we go. Um, so sorry about that. It might have been useful when looking at the chord symbols, but probably not as much, because you could kind of see what I typed as I typed it, right? So can you use lowercase minor? Yeah, so let's come back to chord symbols for a moment. You can absolutely use lowercase for minor. These are some other customizations that are possible. Now, if you just type a lowercase c, it by default doesn't do that, because that's not the standard in most countries. But there are a few countries where lowercase for minor chords are common. And so if you go to Format, Style, and turn off automatic capitalization, then it won't do it automatically. Then if you type lowercase c, it stays C. It still thinks that that's a C minor chord, right? I mean, it still thinks it's C major. You haven't told it it's C minor. So if you really need it to understand that lowercase c means minor, not just I felt like making it lowercase, what you actually want to do is turn on automatic custom capitalization, but tell it that you want lowercase minor chords. And now, if I type let's see how this works. If I type a C, I get a C. If I type a lowercase c, I get, because I had already typed that one, it didn't know that. But now that I've typed it as lowercase c, now it knows that that is indeed a minor chord. So there's a couple other options you saw in there. There's another convention that is used in some parts of the world where lowercase letters are used for bass notes. So there was an option for that as well. Um, and there was an option that said all caps, and I can't, to be honest, I don't even remember what that one's about. What would all caps note names, what the heck would that mean? Because aren't note names already all caps? um oh, well, that's that way. Yeah, so to be honest, I don't actually remember what the um all caps option is for, but it must be something. Uh, yeah, some combination of what you do with the other combinations of options. Okay, so but in Roman numeral analysis, absolutely, you can type lowercase. Yeah, so whatever you type in the Roman numeral analysis. So if I use my shortcut Control Alt R and type a lowercase 6, I get a lowercase 6. It's all pretty much what you see is what you get there as well. So regarding tempo markings, let's type in 120 as my tempo here. Actually, let's type something else. I'm going to make it be 144. Right? It plays back that tempo. If you want something to be, say, slower than that. If I want to say I want to slow down here, I can enter a slower tempo, right? I can enter a tempo of, say, 132. And now it'll be a little slow. Just a little slower. If I want it to be a little more noticeably slower, okay, maybe 126. So there you go. It's a little noticeably slower. I can make it even more noticeably slower. 120. But now what if you change your mind and you decide, you know what? I don't want it to I want it to start off faster than 144. I want to go at 180. Well, you can do that, but then it still slows down to 120. You really didn't want it to slow all the way down to 120, probably. You wanted it to kind of scale. You don't want the second section to be necessarily exactly 120. You just want it to be noticeably slower than you started. So this idea that this tempo marking here could be a percentage of the original tempo. I want it to be 90% of the original tempo. That's part of what this new project will be about, being able to say, hey, I want this tempo to be 90% of the old tempo or 80% of it, or however it's going to be specified. So, but if you want it to feel like it's slowing down gradually, you can do that right now. You can totally do that. And what you do is you just put in some tempo markings every couple of beats and gradually slow it down. So maybe say 170 here, and then add another one here, and make it be 160, and another one here, and make it be 150, right? And then 140 here. And you're all noticing, of course, that it's these tempo markings are all kind of staggering because it's trying to avoid collisions, but that's okay. I'm going to make them invisible in a second anyhow. In fact, I should have just done it as I was entering them, but hey, it's kind of fun to see the staggering, kind of. So I'll enter one more, make it be 130, and a final 120 that I'll actually leave visible. So if I select, I think the shift click. Oh yeah. So this is a new feature. If some of you have seen, some of you might not have. That was implemented. That I implemented about less than a year ago. If I want to select these tempo markings from the 170 to the 130, I just click one, shift click the next, and it selects all the ones in between. You're welcome. Now I press V, and it makes them invisible, and so now they're invisible. But let's listen to that. So it gradually slowed down, right? Because I've got all those invisible tempo markings. Well, you can do that. You can totally do that. But it's kind of a pain in the butt, right? So I'm going to undo all those things. Whoops. But I am going to, well, I'll undo those, but I also want to get my extra notes back. I want to add some more notes again. And if you haven't already seen it, the tempo plugins, the tempo changes plugin is awesome. So I'm going to select from here to here and go to plugins, tempo changes. And it notices the start tempo is 180. The version of the tempo changes palette that I had installed before wasn't that smart. I updated it this morning. So you have to install this plugin yourself. It doesn't come pre-installed, but you just go to let me get to here. Go to MuseScore website, which is musescore.org. Plugins. I think that's the correct URL. Let's find out. Yeah, it has EN for English in here. I don't know if there's a translated version of the page, but in any case, it should bring you to the right version of it. So, and I see a question about page numbers. Page numbers should show up by default. So, maybe you could clarify the question. You just want to change the size of the existing page numbers, because unless you've turned them off, you should already have page numbers. But so there's the place for plugins, and then if you scroll down, you will see the tempo changes plugin. If you keep scrolling, tempo changes plugin. And if you look in the handbook, support handbook, you can find all the documentation on how to install plugins. So HTTPS, that's the handbook. And that's where all the documentation is. And in my online course, I have a nice demonstration where I walk you through the process of installing them. So the tempo changes plugin, you haven't actually seen it in action yet. You just saw the dialog come up. So let me go back to that dialog. It basically, you choose your start tempo and it's defaulting to 180. I want the end tempo to be 120 because that's what it was before. And then I say apply, and it inserts all those invisible tempo markings for me, and then leaves the last one visible. So in no time flat, you get all those invisible tempo markings inserted for you. So that is a wonderful, wonderful plugin Johan Temmerman created, Yete, from the forums and so forth. So great plugin, and whether or not the Summer of Code project makes it to the point of making that more automatic, being able to do that, we would love it if it could get that far. We just don't know, because the Summer of Code program is scaled back a little this year. It used to be like basically a full-time job for the summer. Now it's kind of scaled back to basically half-time, and I think a number of things have scaled back about it, so we're not sure how far that project will get. Okay, so the question that I did see was about um, page numbers. So the page number. So let's show that here. By default, page numbers wouldn't normally appear on the first page of a score. That's sort of normal. So you only see them on page 2 and on. But all you have to do, I think if I double click this, it takes me to the dialog. Yeah. So the page number here is this. It's the $P, and you'll see lowercase p is page number except on first page. Capital P is page number on all pages. So P. And that's saying odd pages will be on the right, even pages on the left. If you don't want it that way, there are all the controls for that as well. So now I should have, did I not change that? Boy, I sure thought I changed that. So either I failed to change it or it didn't work. So let's find out which, shall we? Let's go back over here. Capital P, page number on all pages. Boy, that sure looks like that should have worked, right? Maybe I, why isn't that working? That is a really, really interesting question. I wonder if I save this score and reload it, if that will cause it to show up. I'm going to do that because you've asked a question and I should know if this is going to work. I've never heard of it not working, so I sort of think that maybe it's just something that fixes itself when you save and reload. So I'm not sure, but we'll find out. So I'm going to save it as page 1. And then I'll close it and open. And yeah, we'll see. So as I've often commented, certain operations of my computer are slow while I'm broadcasting. This actually isn't one of them, or the reason why it's taking so long right now is that this folder has become so huge that it takes a long time just to display the dang dialogue, because it's trying to generate thumbnails for some scores that don't have them, and I need to clean that folder out. So I'm just going to sit here and stall while it brings up that dialogue. Need to check show on first page. Oh, Marcus, you're so smart. Thank you so much. That's absolutely right. You are absolutely correct. You are absolutely correct. So it had nothing to do with the fact that so both of those things need to be true. So let's go back to the dialogue, shall we? If I go to Format, Style, And this time I say show on first page. Now I see it. So yes, you got to show it on first page because normally headers don't show on the first page. So here is where you could say my cool header, and it's going to show on all pages, including the first page. But if I want to see the rest of the header on all pages, but not the page number, then I could change that to lowercase p. And there you go. Now the rest of the header is on the first page, but the page number is not. Marcus, you are so smart. Thank you. There you go. I'm looking to see if there's anything else that I've missed here, but I feel like maybe that I'm caught up. Feel free to remind me if there's something I've missed along the way. So the tempo thing is going to be to just give you this more control over that, and also things like, as I mentioned, metric modulations, things like when you go to the tempo palette, you see that there's things like quarter note equals dotted quarter for when you're switching between 4/4 and 6/8 to kind of control how that works in terms of what whether the eighth note stays constant or the big beat stays constant. And so I think the project is going to involve some of these markings as well, but I'm not positive, to be honest, because a lot of this stuff is still being worked out. So hopefully by the end of the summer, I'll be able to show you, and we'll be able to bring on all the students to come on and demo where they are. So they'll be able to show you their own work, and then hopefully some of the work might make MuseScore 4, some of it might be 4.1 or whatever, some future release after that. It's all going to come down to how things all work out schedule wise and so forth. Sometimes, like the chord symbol playback, I think it had been done for over a year before it finally got merged into MuseScore 3.5, but a lot of us were very happy when that finally happened. So those are the projects. And again, the Tempo project would be Siddharth. Arjun is the accessibility project. Ashwat is the project on the chord symbol customizations. And we're really looking forward to their contributions. If you've got further comments for them, feel free to, when I sign off here, to go back to the community and post comments, in the conversation space there, and we'll sort of collect any comments that are available there. So yeah, that's what I wanted to show you here today. So thanks for being here and checking out this little preview of some of the things that are coming in MuseScore. Next week is the first week of the month. Yes, next week will be the first week of the month, so it'll be time for another Ask Me Anything. So feel free to start thinking about your questions, and maybe we can use the conversation space to knock some of them out before the AMA session, or just let me prepare to be able to answer some of them better. I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to be in Florida. So, I'm in Colorado normally. I'll be in Florida at least the next week, probably maybe longer than that, because I'm going back to help my parents with some stuff. So it's sort of an open-ended trip. So I'll be coming at you from Florida for at least the next week. And thanks again, everyone, for being here. Thanks for the students for all the work that they've done so far, preparing to do their projects, and that I know that they're going to be doing on their projects. Tomorrow, same time, is the Music Masterclass. Come back, join us for that. If you haven't already joined the community, please come back, come join the community. The link is pinned at the top. And oh yes, I need to look at the score. So let's look at the score, and here's some music to go home with. So I'm glitchy sometimes while the music's playing, but I'm going to talk anyhow. My name's Marc with the Mastering MuseScore School. Listening to the MuseScore Cafe, watching the MuseScore Cafe. And this is my weekly series on Wednesdays where I talk about MuseScore. Please join the Mastering MuseScore community. Check out the MuseScore tab. It's free to join. You're also welcome to become an all-access member and get access to all of my online courses, which are really, I'm realizing, are university level. I mean, I teach at universities. this is the stuff that I teach in university. The stuff in my harmony course and my counterpoint course, that's university level stuff, and it's available for a pittance. So, end of commercial. Hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of MuseScore Cafe.